here. So one thing I've been looking at is the liquidity. So as we know in cryptocurrency, it's a bit different than stocks, where in stocks you have like a bid and ask spread. So you have someone who wants to sell, they have an ask price, someone who wants to buy, they have a bid price. And once you have two people that kind of meet, then you have an order that gets executed. Now in crypto, it's a bit different. We have these automated market makers, meaning that there's liquidity pools decentralized where me, you, anyone can put our coins up to trade for other people to interact with. Now, one thing that's interesting is that the only thing that price cares about is supply and demand, meaning that the amount of tokens either coming into this pool or the amount of tokens coming out of this pool. So an interesting data point that I've been looking at hexfire.io is the liquidity on EHEX specifically, because I think if we take a look at even the past couple of days with this past little bit of pump we've had, EHEX has been it's been raising its ratio against Pulse, meaning that it's kind of outperforming a lot of the other assets here on PulseChain. If you look at the liquidity here on Ethereum, this is just for the past 6 months where I've timed out this graph. But this liquidity in HEX, it's gone from over 200 million to now we're trailing closer to 100 million. So the amount of HEX that's on the market available to be bought is actually decreasing. So just because we're looking at price and price is down, maybe that's because demand is down. But assuming, like, let's say we had the same amount of demand that we did during 2021 SAC phases and like the whole bull market mania. Let's say we had that exact same amount of demand, just because now we have less supply in these automated market makers, at least on the Ethereum side, what you'll see is a higher price because it's all supply and demand. So even if we zoom out this chart here, we can see this trend in terms of liquidity has been going down pretty much ever since HEX has been born, meaning that in terms of the amount of HEX that's available to be purchased on the market has been continuously going down, meaning that it might not look like it because HEX is inflating and like we have T-shares, right? Like we're getting HEX paid out every single day and it is inflating, but in terms of the actual market where you could purchase it, it's actually technically deflating a little bit in terms of the amount of HEX being able to purchase. On top of that, there's a couple other data points, like if we're looking at staker adoption and holder adoption. So we know Metcalfe's law. This is just an easy like cryptocurrency, not even cryptocurrency metric, just a metric that measures the value of a network. So the network effect, right? So if one person has a cell phone, it's practically useless because you can't call anyone. But if everyone in the world has a cell phone, that's a very useful device, right? Because now you have a communication center across the entire world. This is what cryptocurrency is. It's an international communications network, right? And here we can transfer value. Maybe we can transfer NFTs, which are like artwork. Maybe we can transfer text, phone calls, maybe not phone calls. We'll see what happens. But I think you could send Bitcoin over like radio waves and stuff. So we'll see where the technology takes us. But in terms of the network effects, what we're seeing here is staker adoption and current holders both going up and to the right. So these are key metrics in terms of when you're looking inside of the system, because if the only thing you're looking at is the price chart, it looks down right now. Maybe not so much in the past couple of days, just as of like recently, which is really nice. But if you're looking at the internal metrics rather than just the price chart, what you're actually seeing is a lot of these charts continuously go up and to the right. And if you're looking at things like T-share stats, so we know T-share rate, it continuously goes up and to the right forever. So as people are ending their stakes, that's going to increase share rate, meaning that if the amount of HEX I received from my T-shares, I'm not going to be able to recompound that for more shares. So that makes it essentially so the older guys can get paid a little bit more, and the newer guys, it's a little bit harder for them to get paid, assuming that they have like the same amount of base HEX, because the T-share rate will run away from you. The other thing is the total amount of T-shares. So we know that HEX inflates at 3.69% a year. Now that's like a fixed annual inflation rate, and every single year it inflates a little bit more and more and more and more. Because the inflation is delegated to the future, and we're not seeing lots of the inflation come out immediately, like maybe with some other coins that like maybe there's airdrops and like the inflation can hit the market as of right now maybe. HEX, lots of these T-shares are locked up for an average of like 6, 7, 8 years. So lots of this inflation isn't going to come out to the market for a long time. Not only that, once you have more inflation and you have more tokens in the system, so right now the supply of HEX I think is 650, 660 billion-ish, I think. So maybe it's 600 million or 600 billion, one of those numbers. But either way, once we see this, once we see the inflation rise and that total number of circulating tokens rise, you're going to start to see T shares get paid more inflation in terms of HEX. So let's say you had 800 billion tokens in circulation. Now the T shares are getting paid 3% of that 800 billion instead of, let's say, 600 billion. So you're getting paid a little bit more inflation. On top of that, share rate increases gradually up into the right forever, meaning that there's going to be less T shares in circulation, because the only way the share rate really increases is when T shares leave circulation. So you're going to have a higher supply with the same fixed amount of inflation. But if you have a higher number with the same percent increase, you're going to have a greater percent in terms of like HEX inflation, in terms of like HEX units, I guess you could say. And if that's being distributed to less HEX stakers, what you're going to see is HEX payout per T share. It's going to start rising astronomically right before our eyes. And if you multiply that by price appreciation, because this is the whole point with HEX, right? You not only are able to mine and stake, or whatever you want to call it, you can earn interest on your actual HEX itself. You don't need to purchase mining hardware, stuff like that. But you can also make insane price appreciation. Like last cycle, it went up 1,000,000% before staking, right? So if you had staked, if you were like a good Hexagon, I guess you could say, you staked some of your coins, even if it was for the bull market, maybe you made 100% more token or 50% more token times a 10,000x. That puts you 15,000x. Right? So when you take interest, like I guess we'll say yield, and you multiply it by price appreciation, especially in terms of HEX, because we see HEX for the most part outperform most other cryptocurrencies, and I think that's what we're hoping for this cycle. But I think right before our eyes, we're gonna see this T share become unobtainable for the average person, just because when you're looking at the price chart right now, you can't see these metrics. Like, you can't see all of the internal metrics if the only thing you're looking at is price, because the T share is down, right? But as soon as all of these internal metrics that you can see if you look at the data kind of like kick into place, like T share rate kicks up, the amount of T shares in circulation starts to deflate, right? Once you start to see all these things kick off, and HEX has a crazy run up in the bull market, we're going to see insane things happen to the T share. But you have to be paying attention, because like I said, if you're only looking at the price chart, that's the only thing you care about, that's the only thing you're going to see. But once you're internally in these systems, you can see different things. Now, another thing, where is the tab? Uniswap info. So this is the HEX USDC pair on Ethereum. I think this is the one. No, this is the 0.3% pool. But if you look at the liquidity, most of it's up here at like 3 cents, meaning that once this hits 3 cents, right now, if you wanted to buy on Ethereum, you're going to face big slippage. On this pair, I guess you could say, you're going to face more slippage, rather than once you hit 3 cents, the liquidity starts to thicken up, meaning that there's people who are wanting to either purchase or sell HEX at this price point, but people are paying attention to HEX. They're waiting for the price to increase. They're kind of pricing these things in ahead of time. And this is exactly what you're seeing here on the liquidity chart, is people are pricing the HEX price ahead of time right before your eyes. And if the only thing you're looking at is spot price on Dex Screener, you're not going to see this. So